أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Tuesday night program of Dua Tawassul. Inshallah, we'll get started with the recitation of dua. But before that, as you know, inshallah, this coming Saturday, we will be celebrating the birth of Bibi Fatimatu Zahra, salamullahi alayha, which will be the eve of 20th of Jamadul Akhir or Jamadul Thaniya. Program, inshallah, will start at 5:22 p.m. with Salatul Maghribain. We will have poetry by the local reciters and inshallah jashan after that. So please do attend with your families and friends. Slide. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. Ask for your hajat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just remember all those people who are in need of dua in these difficult times. With this tawassul of ours, let's remember all of them. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Let's remember with all of our marhumin with the Surah Fatiha. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما كان المؤمنون لينفروا كافة فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The verse that I recited for this brief discussion tonight is from Surah Tawbah, chapter 9 of Quran, which begins without Bismillah, also known as Surah Bara'ah. These were the ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed when Islam and Muslimin and the Prophet had developed the strength in Arabia. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down these ayat, the beginning portion of this surah, where it was announced to recite it for the mushrikeen of Makkah. And initially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had asked Rasulullah to announce these ayat, the beginning portion, which reads as Bara'atum min Allahi wa Rasulihi ila alladhina ahadtum min al-mushrikeen. That this is the declaration of disassociation from Allah and His Messenger to those with whom you had made a treaty among the polytheists. So Rasulullah had made a peace treaty with these polytheists of Makkah, and now it was time to show bara'at from them, primarily for what they had done. So when Rasulullah sent the first caliph with these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent another wahi to the Holy Prophet to go ahead and stop the first caliph from taking these ayat, and it should be either yourself or someone who is from you who goes ahead and announces these ayat. So therefore, Rasulullah sent Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, to take these ayat from the first caliph and to go ahead and send him back home. And he himself should go ahead and recite these ayat. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demanded from the Holy Prophet that either he announces it himself or someone from him announces these ayat. And this is a known fact which is mentioned in the tafasir of both madhahib. Now that is not the part of the discussion. The verse that I recited is towards the end, Surah Tawbah, verse number 122. It says, yet it is not for the faithful to go forth in congregation and mass, that it is not possible for all the mu'mineen to go ahead and learn the ulume dini. But why should not there be a group from each of their sections to go forth and become learned in religion? So this is possible. It's not possible for everyone to do this, just like it's not possible for everyone to become a physician. It's not possible for every member of the society to become an expert in law, become an expert in IT, become an expert in other sciences that exist. Similarly, it's not possible for everyone to become experts in religion. Therefore, why not a group of each of their sections go and become learned in religion and warn their people when they return to them so that they may be aware? Yeah, when you look at the concept that warn them when they return, tells you that it might be that you have to go somewhere to attain this ilm din, just like any other ilm that you may have to travel to attain it. The word لِيَتَفَقَّهُ comes from تَفَقُّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, means to strive hard and to acquire a deep understanding with its beliefs and ahkam. Tafaqquh in deen, sometimes it could be for the world. Someone attains ilm deen to get the pleasures of the world, enjoy the fame, the high ranks, and whatnot. Sometimes it could be for the love of the studies. Some of the students that I remember when they entered Hawza Ilmiya, they didn't have any intentions of, becoming Maulana. or dhakirin. Rather, their intention was the love for the studies, ulum ad-din. They just wanted to gain and immerse themselves completely into ulum Ahlul Bayt. That was their passion. Sometimes, keeping oneself busy and not falling behind peers. And sometimes it could be to attain paradise and provide guidance and salvage to the ummah. All of these could be different reasons why a person might embark on this journey. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the thamara and the fruits of acquiring ilm ad-din. وَلِيُنْذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ, tells us that seeking this knowledge isn't for those reasons that I mentioned earlier, that one should just do it for their own sake because they have love for the ulum Ahlul Bayt, or they should attain this for fame or becoming known, and all of those other materialistic reasons that were mentioned. Rather, the reason that Quran wants is وَلِيُنْذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ, tells us that this is for the reason of guiding and providing salvage. That means whoever attains ulum ad-din, the sciences that are part of religion, لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ وَلِيُنْذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ, should go ahead and warn the people of their nation. Fiqh is so important that Prophet gave instructions to Imam in general and Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, and specifically that when he was leaving for Yemen, فَقِّهْهِمْ فِي الدِّينِ, teach them fiqh. That's the words, the exact words of Rasulullah. فَقِّهْهِمْ فِي الدِّينِ, teach them the fiqh. And then made dua, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din, oh Allah, enrich him and give him understanding in the knowledge of the deen and the fiqh. Amir al-Mu'mineen instructed his son by saying the same thing. Tafaqqaha fi ad-din fa inna al-fuqaha, or tafaqqah fi ad-din fa inna al-fuqaha warathatul anbiya, that ponder in religion because fuqaha are the warathatul anbiya. And then we hear in the words of Imam Hussein, similar, Allahumma alhamdulillah alladhi faqahtana fi ad-din. On the night of Ashura, Imam is uttering these words. That, oh Allah, we are thankful. We praise you that you bestowed us, or you gave us deep understanding of the deen. Here I want to, tonight, very quickly, show the role and the contribution of some youth in the Shia traditions, that the role that youth played in supporting Ahlul Bayt politically, intellectually, and socially in different ages, as well as the challenges and the opportunities faced by the youth in present age. That they should not be just waiting for something and someone to come along and do something for them. It is also individually their duty to do so as well. So we see that the role and the contribution is divided into three stages. Number one, in the time of the infallible Imams, which will be the discussion tonight. Then in the time of Ghaibat al-Kubra, and then in the time and the challenges that are present to us in this day and age. So this will be a threefold discussion. First, let's look at the view of Quran regarding youth. فَمَا آمَنَ لِمُوسَى إِلَّا ذُرِّيَّةٌ مِّن قَوْمِهِ. Surah Yunus 83 talks about it. But none believed in Moses except some youth from among his people. So who were the first ones to bring Iman and faith onto Hazrat Musa? The youth in the community. Surah Kahf, which is regarding these youth. نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق فإنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. That we relate to you the account of these in truth. They were indeed youth who had faith in their Lord, and we had enhanced them in guidance. Similarly, in Surah Anbiya, ayat 60 says, قَالُوا مَنْ فَعَلَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا. When Hazrat Ibrahim broke all the idols, who did this to all of our gods? Response came, قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيم. We've heard of a young man, Fatan, who's called Ibrahim. Similarly, you have when Zulfaqar came down and was given to Amir al-Mu'mineen, it says, La fata illa Ali, la sayf illa Zulfaqar. So the word fata is the same as fatan in Surah Anbiya, ayat number 60, or fityatun in Surah Kahf, ayat number 13. Fata refers to that young man or youth. In the time of infallible Imams, I just want to share one incident regarding what youth played a role during that time. Their tradition is from Muhammad ibn Yahya, who narrates from Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Isa, who narrates from Ali ibn al-Hakam and Ismail ibn Abdul Khaliq, who said, I heard Aba Abdullah, 6th Imam, يقول لأبي جعفر الأحوال وأنا أسمع أتيت البصرة. He said that Imam Jafar Sadiq asked a companion regarding al-ahwal, whom refers to a person by the name Mu'min al-Taq. Have you been to Basra? The man replied, yes. The Imam then asked him, how did you find the enthusiasm of the people in regards to the issue of the wilayah of imamat of Ahlul Bayt? Important question. He says, and their acceptance of it. He replied, I swear to Allah, surely those people who followed and accept this are few in number. That means I didn't find much enthusiasm. They work upon this, propagating this belief to others, even though they are small in number. Imam replied to him, I advise you to work on the youth in educating them on these issues, since surely they are quicker to accept all good things. Why? Because إنما قلب الحدث كالأرض الخالية ما ألقي فيها من شيء قبلته. Surely the heart of the youth is the uncultivated ground. It'll accept whatever of good you throw towards it. This is in Nahj al-Balagha, letter number 31. This is why we see the likes of Hisham ibn al-Hakam and Mu'min al-Taq becoming the pioneers of different sciences while they were very young at age. Similarity can be drawn to Da'wat al-Dhul Ashira, when the Prophet invited all his old family members, the senior family members, but only Amir al-Mu'mineen, who was only 10 years old at that time, responded positively. The rest, not only they did not accept, but mocked him as well. So in the time of the infallible Imams, we have an individual by the name Hisham ibn Hakam. Who is Hisham? Hisham was born in the beginning of the 2nd century in Kufa. He grew up in the city of Wasit. He traveled to Baghdad for business. From his youth years, Hisham was inclined and passionate towards seeking knowledge. And in order to reach this passion of his, he quickly learned all the contemporary sciences that were available. He studied the books of philosophy by the Greek philosophers and even wrote rebuttal to one of them. None of these sciences could satisfy the thirst for the reality and the truth until he was directed toward 6th Imam, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, والسلام, by his uncle Umair ibn Yazid al-Kufi. His uncle Umair said, go to Jafar al-Sadiq, والسلام. Hisham was a close disciple of 6th Imam and as well as 7th Imam. He was the most prominent Shiite mutakallim, theologian of his time. Of course, getting all his knowledge from 6th Imam. He traveled to many places in order to introduce, spread, and even debate the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. How did Imams look at Hisham? Hisham, in the sight of Imam, an example of how Imam treated his distinguished students, can lift the veil on the status of Hisham near Imam. So one of the stories that is mentioned is that it was when the crowded days of Hajj, Imam was speaking to a group of his companions as Hisham, who had just began his youth years, walked in. Imam became happy seeing this young man, invited him to sit close to him, honored him by giving a place right next to him. This behavior of Imam was very surprising to many who were present there in that gathering. And it was so obvious that Imam said, "Hada nasiruna biqalbihi wa lisanihi wa yadihi." This young man is our helper with his heart, with his tongue, and with his hands. Just to silence these people who were questioning Imam. Later on, in order to prove Hisham's knowledge, to everyone, Imam asked him about the names of Allah and its particulars, to which Hisham replied back comfortably. So when this was established in front of people that Hisham is not an ordinary individual, the knowledge that he has directly from Imams is solid. Then Imam asked him, "Oh Hisham, do you have enough knowledge to defend us against our enemies?" He said, "Absolutely." Then Imam made dua for him. "Nafa'aka Allahu bihi wa thabbatak." May Allah keep you steadfast on this path and to benefit you from it. Hisham said, "After this dua, I never lost in any debate. No one could ever overcome me as far as my debates were concerned." One of the debates I wanted to present to you tonight, inshallah, in the next couple of minutes, the important and the effective methods of spreading the religion was debates back in the time. So there would be groups of people sitting in masjid and they would debate. Hisham used this method to perfection. And of course, dua of Imam was Shamil Hal. Imam made this dua for him that Nafa'aka Allahu bihi wa thabbatak. And of course, with this dua and his knowledge combined with it, he never lost. In order to be a good debater, aside from immense knowledge, of course, over the subject that you're speaking about, one must be clever, brave, and eloquent. In one of these famous debates with Amr ibn Ubaid al-Mu'tazili, which is quoted by Yunus ibn Yaqub, also another prominent student of Imam, I've spoken about Yunus before, who said once during Hajj in Mina, we were sitting with Imam and he asked Hisham to narrate the debate he had with Amr ibn Ubaid. So to the extent Imam is elevating the status of Hisham that he asks, "Oh Hisham, go ahead and tell us, how did you debate with Amr?" Hisham was the youngest in the gathering. He said, "Oh son of Rasulullah, your presence doesn't permit me. It will be audacious, jasarat hogi, to speak in front of you." Then Imam ordered him, when the order of Imam comes, and of course he has no choice, to narrate. He said one day he heard that Amr ibn Ubaid is in Masjid of Basra with his students, and they're discussing about Imamat, a belief of Shia, and proving it to be invalid. So there was constant, work being done against the Shia, and these people were constantly speaking. Not only that they didn't believe in it, but there was active, propaganda against Imamat. So he said that this was disturbing news to me. So I went and took part in the gathering. I asked the people present there to let me get close to Amr. Can I ask him a few questions? He said, "Oh, knowledgeable man." This is the tafsir of Qawl and Karima. "I'm a stranger and I would like to ask some strange questions." Amr asked, or replied rather, "Ask my son, whatever you wish." So I asked him, "Do you have eyes?" At first, he was annoyed, but I requested him to answer, to which he said, "Ask even though your questions are foolish." Amr said to him, "Go ahead and ask whatever you want to ask, although your questions seem like very foolish to me. Do I have eyes? Of course I have eyes. What do you use them for?" Again, Amr, had a smirk on his face. He said, "With eyes, I distinguish between colors and recognize people." Then he said, I asked him, do you have a nose? Again, he looked around, looking at people, like, what's wrong with this boy? And then he nodded, yes, right here. He said, what do you use it for? He said, I use it to smell different things. Then I asked him, do you have a tongue? And this was getting out of hands. This was becoming ridiculous. He said, yes. I said, what do you use it for? He said, I use it to taste food, getting agitated. You could tell in the conversation. He said, do you have ears? I said, of course. So what do you do with them? He said, well, I use them. I listen to different sounds. After all that, I asked him, do you have a heart? To which he said, yes. So what do you do with the heart? He replied, heart is the center of all the senses. Whatever passes through these organs, I measure with heart in order to stay away from making mistakes. So the eyes and the ears and the tongue and all of these organs, I pass it through my heart so that I remain from making mistakes. I asked him, with the existence of all the organs, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, do you not feel needless about the heart? He said, no, never. I said, even though your body parts are all sound, you can see perfect vision, you have perfect ears, you're able to speak properly. And yes, do you still require heart? He said, oh, my son, when an organ is skeptical about sensing something, it is referred to the heart in order to clarify the doubts. I said to him, God created the heart in order to rectify the doubts of your organs. Correct? Existence of the heart is necessary for relieving the perplexity and doubts that normally come about. That if you hear something and you did not hear it properly, or you try to make sense of it, you run it through your heart. And heart here refers to your aql. He kept agreeing by nodding yes. I said to him, you're claiming that God didn't create your organs without a leader, hearts. That means all these other organs are tabi of that leader, which is heart, which could bring them out of doubts when confused. How is it possible that he would leave his creations in the valley of confusion, where chances of being misled are very high without a leader? While all of these organs of yours are in conformity, are together in this one body, eyes, ears, nose, tongue. Yet still there's a heart which has a functionality to protect all of these from making a mistake, which are so close and connected. Then how is it possible that Allah would leave his creations in the valley of confusion, where there's more chance of being misled without a leader? And of course, this is where the munazara and the debate ended, and Amr did not have any answer. He agreed to what Hisham said. Imam became happy after hearing this story and said to Hisham, by God, this what you said is written in the scriptures of Ibrahim and Musa alayhi wasalam. Hisham's contributions weren't just limited to the debates. Rather, he wrote extensively about the sciences of Ahlul Bayt. Hisham's impacted the Shia tradition and supported Ahlul Bayt intellectually, politically, as well as socially. He was known as mutakallim, as I said before, theologian, who debated many sects and religions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to learn from these examples, such as Hisham ibn Hakam, a prominent student and a companion of Imam, who stood up for the haqqaniyat of madhab tashayyu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq and ability that we can also stand up for the haqqaniyat of madhab tashayyu. Wa akhir da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mutawajjih ziyarah. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Akhirat Allah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya Aba Abdullah, assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa ala jaddika wa abika wa ala ummika wa akhika wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya Gharib al-Ghuraba, assalamu alaikum ya Mu'in al-Du'afa wal-Fuqara, assalamu alaikum ya Shams al-Shumus wa Anis al-Nufus, ayyuha al-Madfun bi'ardatus, Ali ibn Musa Rada wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Assalamu alaikum Imam al-Insi wal-Jan, assalamu alaikum ya Sharik al-Quran, ajjal Allah ta'ala farajak wa sahhal Allah makhrajak wa dhuhurak, وجعلنا من أعوانكم الصالحين ورحمة الله وبركاته.